Thank you so much for joining us on this very chilly Tuesday evening. Time is 7:06. Roll call, please.
Nelson.
Here.
Lanier.
Here.
Briggs.
Here.
Blackman. Here. Paredes.
Here.
Leestra. Here. Warren.
Here and a quorum is present. We're going to move through the agenda. The first item on the agenda includes audience comments. We do not have anyone who has signed up. Okay, so we're going to keep moving. District 161 Board of Education.
Yes, it's recognition for the D161 Board of Education. We're always supported by the 7 of you and the hard work that you do. It's certainly a thankless job typically, except this is always an opportunity just for us to say thank you for the hours that you put in, the time that you spend advocating for the children in our community, and for our wonderful teachers and our excellent administrators. You guys are excellent stewards for the district, making sure that we are maximizing every dollar, every moment that we spend to deliver great opportunities for kids. And so for that, we say thank you. We have a small token of our appreciation for all of you. It is cheesy, but remember, we're all teachers, so it is supposed to be cheesy. So we have deliveries. So Cam and David will have deliveries for you when you guys get back to the area. But we have a little, we have a little poem and a little picture for you. It says, extra, extra, read all about it. District 161 would like to take 5 to honor your commitment to all our Smarties. Oh, sorry. Your kindness and bounds of almond joy help keep us in the zone and focus on our goals. We know that some days are whoppers, but we're really scored when it comes to having great work. Now we don't have to worry about having snacks. Thank you. That's right.
I love it. He said, I'll just watch TV. Like, that's not what happened. My 6-year-old wanted to come to the meeting today. Oh, I said, I don't think it would be exciting. And he said, I'll just watch TV. And like, no, it's not TV. It's fun. Thank you very, very much. This is awesome.
Thank you.
All right, well, we can just adjourn. Much left. Okay, superintendent.
Sure, we've had a great couple of weeks since our last meeting. As you know, the state summative designations came out that identified Serena Hills, Boston Hills, and Parker Junior High as commendable, and Heather Hill and Western Avenue as exemplary. I know that our students, teachers, and administrators worked very hard on the school improvement plans that deliver those great ratings. We'll continue to implement the plans with fidelity and with focus. I'm especially proud of the change of Parker Junior High from their initial rating in 18-19 as underperforming. Truly, this is great news, but we really have a lot of work to do. We have subgroups, achievement gaps, and decreases in proficiency as our students move through our district that we have to address. Plans are already in place to address those areas. We've shared our information far and wide to make sure our community is aware of our achievements, and will continue to do so. This week, we have our second day of strategic planning focused on developing our vision and mission. We're actually meeting tomorrow from 3:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. in this exact room. We will provide dinner for those who participated. After tomorrow, we'll have an update for the board on what that draft vision and mission will look like. We'll also survey the community so that they know exactly what the team is working on. They'll have an opportunity to share their information as well. Our next dessert with D161 is next Monday evening, and that will be here. We're focusing on equity and diversity, and we'll have conversations and food about our diversity and equity issues in our district, and essentially how do we want to move forward with those. It's a very small first step in our equity work, but it will certainly be meaningful as we're trying to determine what's next after we present the strategic plan to the board in January, and hopefully get that approved in February.
What time?
6 o'clock. And then finally, if you have any changes to your arrangements for Triple I, please let Courtney know ASAP, and we'll get on that. Remember, it's next week, not this weekend, the following weekend. We want to make sure that everything is perfect so we can travel smoothly and be there. Remember, we have 2 presentations. Michelle and I are presenting at 10:30 in the morning, which is always great. And then I am presenting with Forecast 5 at 1:45 in the afternoon. So, what's it?
On Saturday.
On Saturday.
10:30 and 1:45.
10:30 and 1:45. So we have a couple of presentations from District 161, which would be great. Looking forward to that. And that's it on my report.
Any questions or comments?
Do you know
No.
I'm gonna get here. We will take no questions from the 161 audience. Okay, if there are no questions or comments, we'll move to the Equity and Inclusion Committee report.
Sure. And actually, in inclusion tonight, just finalizing everything for next Monday. Again, it's an opportunity for us to just talk about diversity and equity in District 161. Essentially, as people are RSVPing, we'll separate the groups into tables, and we'll have a number of guiding questions that we'll use, one, to break the ice with the different teams, but also just to start those conversations around diversity and equity. We'll have an opportunity for teams to capture information and then to do a passive share out, so we don't put anyone on the spot for the challenging issues, but certainly at each table, move throughout the room, see what the other groups are working on, and really provide us with some good information that we can use to figure out our next steps. So it should be a good opportunity to get started. We also have leads on some community partners from both Prairie State and Governor State that we're going to look to leverage later in the winter. And I'm working with the Village of Flossmoor, Allison specifically, on 2 different groups who can do equity audits. So it's starting to come together on those 2 areas.
Any questions? I just want to make sure, so I think I saw the Facebook blast. I think there's an email that came out too, right? So as much as we also could just push it out, but people know that it's happening, and it's not just our normal dessert with the district activity.
Right. Normal desserts are full, of course.
Well,
we're looking for a little bit more participation in
yes.
this. Just be sure. So if you can push it out, we'll continue to roll it out. We already have RSVPs, so people are looking forward to the conversation.
Hey, Dave,
Yes.
while we have Michelle in the audience, maybe talk a little bit about this section about the table to get Michelle's thoughts on.
I missed the last piece, David.
The table.
Oh, with the tables, do you have thoughts on separating into tables and kind of guided conversations with those?
Sure. I'm happy to just talk outside of the board on that as well, but, I think it all depends on how, so this is modeled a little bit off of something we have done at University of Chicago's diversity dinners, and so our participants RSVP'd, and we had several different dinner spots all over the place, and had special guests, community members that are special guests. So folks who RSVP'd actually did not know they were going to be eating with until they actually showed up for dinner, which was pretty cool. And so we had guests from, that range from Cook County commissioners to, the local nonprofit down the street who had never done anything on campus before. And then we had 3 guiding questions just to sort of jumpstart the conversation, but we also just wanted conversations to sort of organically happen, right? And then we all came back together for dessert. All of the different dinner groups came back together for dessert and just had, conversations with each other. Dessert, yeah. So there'll still be dessert.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
So I've not read through the latest minutes, David, in terms of what you guys
There are a few
have come up
revisions.
with? Okay. But yeah, certainly, I mean, this is, should be designed to be a stress-free event. Right, it's food and conversation. Can't get any easier than that. Doesn't have to be highly structured. I think if people walk away if people begin in understanding what the goal is of the event, then I think that's the most I would ask for, right? Is like, what do you hope to get out of this? Like, and I would expect that direction to come, from you or someone else on the committee. So David, is there something specific that you wanted me to comment on?
So now you just answered that question because I think that a lot of people in the room were searching for that answer and we didn't have it.
Oh, okay. I'm glad I did.
So that's kind of shedding light on it.
Right, yeah, it sounds like you guys are, it's good to go. Yeah. So, I mean, I think this will be a fun event. Hopefully, community members will come out and they will RSVP. I mean, there aren't that many times ever, right? You get to actually sit and just chat with, members of the community. It's always, you see them in the grocery store, you might see them at a school event. So this should be fun and, a way for us to get to know the people in the community, but certainly, hopefully all board members will participate as well. But also just a way for us to reconnect with the community as well. We good?
I was gonna ask if you were invited.
Absolutely.
It did.
That's it. Put it right up.
Thanks, Courtney.
Hey, Daniel, did you tell them when the event is, by the way?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, Dave?
Did you tell them when the event was?
Yes, did you tell us when the event is?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And it's in everybody's calendar.
Yes.
Already.
Okay, good, okay.
Okay. You would think that he's not in Springfield. It's like thousands of miles away. Okay. If there are no other questions about the committee report, we're going to move into executive session. I need a motion. Okay, I need a motion, please, to move into exec session to discuss matters relating to litigation.
So moved.
Need a second?
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. But how long will we do? Okay, so Dr. Smith says this will be about 5 minutes.
You know to round up.
Paredes,
Here.
Nelson,
Here.
Briggs,
Here.
Blackman,
Here.
Lanier,
Do that.
Take a roll call vote, or roll call, David.
Did you say Lanier?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Leestra, here, Forrest.
Here in quorum is present. Next item on the agenda are the consent agenda items. Can I have a motion to approve consent agenda items, including November 12, 2019 revised personnel report, minutes from October 15th Board of Ed meeting, September 23rd exec session meeting minutes, October 15th exec session meeting minutes, payroll for the month of October, Devereaux Hold Harmless contract, special ed transportation contract, and updated school support aid job description and policy updates. That was a lot.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions, concerns, comments? Okay, roll call please.
Nelson,
Yes.
Blackman,
Yes.
Leestra.
Yes.
Lanier,
David.
Yes.
Briggs,
Yes.
Paredes.
Yes.
Forrest.
Yes, and the motion's passed. The bills for the month of November were reviewed by Mr. Paredes.
Having read through all the bills and examining them thoroughly, I will entertain a motion to accept and approve the bills for the month of November as presented for $745,031.58. I've entertained a motion.
Second.
Any questions? Roll call, please.
Blackman,
Yes.
Nelson,
Ken?
Yes.
Leestra,
Yes.
Paredes,
Yes.
Briggs,
Yes.
Lanier,
Yes.
Horace,
Yes, and the motion has passed. For the 2019 IASB resolution, I have to say them individually.
And we have several, we
We have
have
several.
18 total. Yes, a number of them.
I'll let you do
Okay, so, remember, the board will vote as a whole, and then our designated delegate, Mr. Paredes, will cast her vote on Saturday morning, I believe, right, Steve?
Yes, 10:30.
Okay. At 10:30, that's
Did you not miss the? Oh, no.
My heart's breaking. It's breaking. But I
We
hope
will
that
take
somebody,
pictures.
somebody will record this for fidelity
That's right, for-
Yeah.
so that we can use
Oh,
it.
yeah,
The whole
I'm
district.
gonna zoom in and everything.
Yes.
Great camera.
Okay, so, that first new resolution, student safety resolution, the committee recommends to adopt. Are there any questions about this one?
Yes, I say no, don't adopt, for the exact reasons last year. Can I just please clarify that the,
Oh, this is the same one from last
it's
year.
the same as last year? That, just it says, be it resolved that the Illinois Association of School Boards shall support and advocate for legislation which provides local school boards the option for developing student safety and protection plans which allow for voluntary district employees in any capacity the ability to carry a concealed firearm on district property provided blah, 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 and so forth. Same as last year. And for the same reason as last year, I will argue, as most law enforcement people I've spoken to about this, and the students I've asked about this, and school personnel I've asked about this, that this is a terrible idea. First and foremost, because if you are not a trained law enforcement person who has an extensive training in making life and death firearm decisions, that you absolutely have no business carrying firearms, so that you would be put in a position where at some point you have to decide if you're going to shoot somebody on school grounds. And that is something, the rationale being that the many districts don't have adequate funding for their police stations and first responders to be close enough to schools. I think that one of the real detriments of this is that you're providing an out for the state to provide that that first responding positioning, so that you're going to have an ineffective system by which you're going to rely on that is destined for tragedy, and you're never going to facilitate having first responders close enough to the school where they need to be in the first place.
Any other comments before we vote?
So if we're
Yeah.
voting recommend to not adopt, then we vote no.
Correct, and then when this comes up, Steve will cast a new vote.
Okay.
I think we all agree on that.
I would just point out that this is being put forward by a rural school district, and I don't think we've got any business telling rural school districts that they should be doing what they're doing. They can make their decisions, we can make ours. They've got a valid basis to make the decision they want, whether we agree with it. But I think it's a high variance for us to think that's our place to tell them what to do.
So this, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I'm reading, this allows each district to make their own decision regarding this, correct?
That's what the rule is.
Correct.
So,
It will, but IASB will advocate for the passage of legislation allowing school districts to move in this direction.
I kind of agree with Cameron. I don't know how I can tell a rural district who has to wait 20 minutes for any kind of law enforcement to wait for any kind of help or aid to come in an emergent situation. I have no right, because I can have a police here in a minute and a half. So I would vote yes for it. That's me, but.
So, we need to actually vote on it.
You vote.
To the question, is there another option? Is there only yes, no? Is there like a vote preference?
It's either you recommend that they do adopt it or recommend that they do not.
So the preference is not.
What was that last?
So what you're saying is preference is not an option.
No, it's either do or do not.
But let me just clarify one more time. If it gets accepted, it does not necessarily mean that we do it.
You still have.
No, it just means that this board is saying that they support the IASB and their lobbying groups, working with legislators on legislation to allow this to move forward.
But a point of clarification, it would then also allow districts with police 1 minute away to do this as well too.
Yeah,
It doesn't specifically say,
And usually-
only if you don't. It would, we could,
Right. The other thing is, it doesn't matter whether or not you recommend that they do or they don't. If legislation comes down and it gets signed, it moves forward, right? So this is just, the only thing that this is doing is saying that, yes, we support any work the IASB is going to do on these 18 specific areas, right? So, last year, this board did vote no on this resolution.
Generally speaking, these resolutions are carried by the association's lobbyists to Springfield to promote this. And the idea is that as a local school board, we would, come together as a Congress of school boards and have a majority opinion about these individual 18 things that individual school boards have put into, we would like to have this. Some might say we want charter schools, some might say you don't want there to be funding to charter schools. And this is really meant to shape or influence state legislation. So it's kind of giving a voice. And so when you're theoretically, if you're an elected body, you represent this entire community. And when you take all those together, it's kind of a voice from the community that says this percentage of people in the state of Illinois support this as it relates to school-specific issues. And, in some cases, things have passed and sometimes they don't. And this is just, even on this, and while I respect that yes, there are rural communities, and who is Flossmoor to tell them what they can or cannot do? It really, I think it's kind of like the Boston Tea Party, that it wasn't that people hated tea, it's just that they recognized this is almost like, this isn't like an entry in our culture. That once it's in, it becomes normalized, it becomes more normalized everywhere. And I remember years ago, the community of Winnetka wanted to have all their officers armed with Uzis because they felt that that would make them more safe community, which is preposterous. I mean, but again, it's something that once this is something that is normalized, as it is in certain states, it just grows. And then eventually, it's something that it really changes our whole culture. And I think, as I said before, the problem with this is that the action that needs to be done, that is supported by law enforcement, that is I think really reflected in what would actually work is there needs to be more funding for law enforcement and for school safety officers. I mean, there's some resolutions in here that address that. that is where I think you're going to see solutions. The other issue with having teachers or, the gym teacher or the paraprofessionals or custodians or, principals with firearms, aside from now you have an armed individual in the school that individual students might be worried about. This is a big concern in students that I've had. And so I would really feel uncomfortable if teacher X or administrator X had a gun, because I know that teacher doesn't like me. And it really adds to the overall trauma or the sense of anxiety that kids already feel in school. Aside from which, it's just really, it's really a distraction from what needs to be happening in this state, where it's I don't know. I mean, I just feel that this is for the same reasons I felt last year, this is really a tragedy waiting to happen if this goes forward. There's military personnel who spend time and done multiple tours in Afghanistan and Iraq. Some of them were in my family who I would not feel comfortable armed in my school. And they have said, quite frankly, that they would not feel comfortable with people they know who are armed in schools as well. This is, I think, in the long run, this is a big issue. And one other stat, if I may, most shootings in schools, most people who are killed in schools are killed from self-inflicted gunshot wounds. And that while, school shooters are horrible, the larger issue is kids who commit suicide by firearm in front of their entire class. And if we're really training people to focus on that, and we're not really looking at the bigger issue of keeping our kids safe and the mental health issues of our students, I think that we're going to get distracted by thinking we've somehow solved it because teacher X, is carrying, a firearm, or maybe carrying a firearm.
Thanks.
So we should go. Roll call. Come first. I would read it the way it's written. And I know that we don't have to take individual action, but essentially it's okay. So we have a resolution. The resolution committee recommends do adopt. And now we have a roll call vote.
So the resolution, you guys heard that, resolution committee recommends do adopt. Okay, roll call please.
Lanier,
You would abstain. Dave, you can abstain.
You stay.
I think.
Okay.
Briggs,
No.
Leestra,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Blackman,
No.
Paredes,
No.
Horace,
No, and the motion to adopt has failed.
Correct.
Okay.
The second one is for business enterprises minority owned. And the recommendation is to adopt.
I need a motion to,
You can just call it. You don't need individual.
okay, we'd like to call a vote. Roll call please.
Leestra,
Yeah, no, sorry.
Nelson,
Can't.
You guys have lost me. Are we voting to adopt or not to adopt?
This is for the second one, minority owned businesses, to adopt.
Yes.
Lanier, Lanier,
David?
Yes.
Blackman,
Yes.
Paredes,
Yes.
Briggs,
Yes.
Horace.
Yes? And the motion to adopt passes.
Okay, number 3 is the school safety grant program. Recommendation is do adopt.
Roll call, please.
Briggs,
Yes.
Lanier,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Blackman,
Yes.
Paredes,
Yes.
Leestra.
Yes.
Corrigan.
Yes, and the motion has passed. Next one.
Number 4 is school district police force, and the recommendation is do adopt.
I would have these
Can I ask a question? Okay, so is this essentially saying that we are agreeing that police should be in the schools?
I don't believe so. It's just if there were school districts that had a previous professional police force. If you notice, this came from Peoria SD 150, which is a pretty large district.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that they had their own security police force, and this would reauthorize them to bring that in.
So it's kind of specific to,
Yes, yeah, most of them.
okay, because I was like, I didn't even realize that.
So this
Taking out
is-
the schools now.
This is for districts that had a police force, that for whatever reason got rid of the police force, and this is saying that they can get the police force. Something prevented them from
You know that.
But not that we are now going to have
No,
a police force.
no.
no.
It's people who have had a police force already. They want the police force back. I don't understand what caused them to not have it.
Okay. All right.
Any other questions? Roll call.
Blackman,
Yes.
Nelson,
Cam?
Sorry, Lanier. Yes.
Lanier,
David?
Oh, I can't hear. Yeah.
Leestra.
Yes.
Paredes,
Yes.
Briggs,
Yes?
Corrigan.
Yes, and the motion passed.
Next one is background checks for substitute teachers. Recommendation is do adopt.
Any questions? Roll call.
Nelson,
Yes.
Lanier,
Yes.
Briggs,
Yes?
Blackman,
Yes.
Paredes,
Yes.
Leestra.
Yes.
Corrigan.
Yes, and the motion is passed.
Okay, number 6 is school safety traffic zones. Recommendation is do adopt.
No questions? Roll call.
Briggs,
Yes.
Paredes.
Yes.
Leestra.
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Lanier,
Yes.
Blackman,
Yes.
Corrigan.
Yes, and the motion is passed.
Number 7 is school board elections, the seating of new members, and the recommendation is do adopt.
Which one is this number 7?
This one is number 7.
You don't have to wait for 20 days. You can do it earlier if you want. Yes, any questions?
Steve, what do you think?
Just wait, Carolyn. Roll call, please.
Paredes,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Griggs,
Yes.
Blackman,
Yes.
Lanier,
Yes.
Leestra.
Yes.
Corrigan.
Yes, and the motion is passed.
Number 8 is school board elections, swearing in. The recommendation is do not adopt.
Any questions?
So we are, if we support the association, then we would say yes. Which would mean we're not going to adopt swearing in,
Correct.
the swearing in. Okay.
I feel like this is specific to this district, and they want to have their people do their thing.
Right, this is the one that doesn't make sense to apply it to everybody. Or at least that's. Any other questions? Roll call?
Nelson,
Yes, yeah, we're going to accept the recommendation, right? Which is deny that.
Correct.
Yes.
Blackman,
Yes.
Leestra.
Yes.
Lanier,
Yeah.
Griggs,
Yes.
Paredes,
Yes.
Forrest.
Yes, the motion is passed.
Item 9 is school board elections terms. The recommendation is do adopt.
Any questions? Roll call?
Blackman,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Leestra.
Yes.
Paredes,
No.
Griggs,
Yes.
Lanier,
Yeah.
Forrest.
Yes, and the motion is passed. Next item.
Okay. You guys are all just paid in gratitude. But number 10 is school board member compensation. The recommendation is do not adopt.
Any questions? Do you have a question?
Yes, do not adopt.
You do not want to adopt.
Wait,
That's double
Yeah,
A.
the recommendation is do not adopt.
Yes, you do not want to adopt. You do want to adopt.
Okay, wait, now you just confused me, you explained it.
So if you go, yes, you are agreeing with the recommendation to not
I
adopt.
want to get paid, or no, I don't want to put it in terms, that's what I'm saying.
If you would like to get paid, you would say no.
If I would like to get paid, I say no.
Correct. And
If I
if you do
don't,
not want to get paid, you would say yes.
all right.
Bob?
Very before that.
Just like, you need to put it in things that apply to my brain.
Roll call.
Lanier,
Huge. I think I'm saying, yeah. The double negative, I don't get that.
Right?
So yes. Don't.
Griggs,
Yes.
Leestra.
yes.
Nelson,
Whichever option means we don't need to get paid.
Yes.
Blackman,
Yes.
Paredes,
Yes.
Forrest.
Yes, and the motion is passed.
Number 11 is charter school renewal of charters. The resolution committee recommends do adopt.
Okay.
I'm ready to vote.
Roll call?
Leestra,
No.
Nelson,
No.
Lanier,
No.
Blackman,
Can we hear some rationale for,
those of you that are voting no. Because this is saying school boards are not having enough input on charter schools, right?
That's how I read it.
So this would say, if you adopt this, that you would like the Illinois Association of School Boards to advocate for legislation that would allow the local school board to have some participation in the charter school renewal process. Meaning, if a charter school opens up across the street from Sweeting Hills, obviously they take funds directly from District 161 and District 161 students. This would advocate for you to have a say in the renewal process of their charter.
161 would have a say.
yes,
That's what this is, they're saying, we want districts to have a say.
Correct.
yes.
They're saying that they do not recommend that we have a say.
Well, they do.
This is.
If you say yes, you agree with
Negatives
that.
are driving me nuts, okay.
Yes, you want to be able
I'm on it.
So,
This is, do you want a say, so in charter school renewal process, as a 161 person, do you want to be able to have a say so, or you don't? If you do want to have a say so, then you need to vote yes to adopt it.
My rationale is I surely don't want the charter school to have the say-so in how I run my district.
No, but they take your.
But,
This is not really about us.
Nothing
And
going on.
this is not about 161. We don't have charter schools. We don't worry about charter schools. What this is about is charter schools are opening up the city. They make Chicago public schools look bad.
Right.
Because Chicago public schools are bad. And then now they want to exercise control over the charter schools so they can drag them down to their level. That's why I'm voting no. This has nothing to do with us.
Why are you voting no? Can you say the last two sentences?
Because this is, the reason people create charter schools is when they're so dissatisfied with their school district that they want to create something else, right? So by definition, the only place this arises is where the school districts are awful. And so if the resolution might as well say, do we want to give the awful school district that couldn't do its job a say in the school that's actually successful that they're not jealous of? That's what's really happening. It happens in every big city. It has to do with Baltimore, it has to do with Chicago, St. Louis, the places where charter schools are having success.
I think you oversimplified, but I understand.
It's okay, yeah, that's why he's right.
Yes, that's what I wanted to know.
So, are you all ready to vote?
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Roll call, please. Let me do it over. Yes.
Okay. Leestra.
I'll still say no.
Nelson.
No.
Lanier.
No.
Blackman.
You all are never going on game.
This is so negative, I'm not.
Competitive. Don't. You will pick.
Yes.
Paredes.
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes.
Horace.
Yes. And the motion is passed.
And 12 is charter schools at-risk students. Recommendation is do adopt.
Any discussion?
Are there any questions about this one? This one would compel charter schools to educate at-risk students, similar to all public schools.
Roll call?
Briggs.
Yes.
Lanier.
Yeah.
Nelson.
Cam?
Yes.
Blackman.
Yes.
Paredes.
Yes.
Leestra.
Yes.
Horace.
Yes. And the motion is passed.
Number 13 is financing public education. These are amended existing positions. The recommendation is do adopt. This is prevailing wage.
Any questions? Roll call, please.
Blackman.
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Lanier.
David?
I didn't hear, okay, yeah.
Leestra.
Yes.
Paredes.
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes.
Horace.
Yes, and the motion is passed.
Number 14 is educational programs. Recommendation is do adopt. There's a number of different pieces in there. Covers a lot of mental health issues.
Roll call?
Nelson.
Cam?
Yes.
Lanier.
David?
Yeah.
Briggs.
Yeah.
Blackman.
Yes.
Paredes.
Yes.
Leestra.
Yes.
Horace.
Yes, and the motion is passed.
Number 15 is state authorized charter school funding. Essentially advocate for legislation that does not have a negative impact on the host district where a charter school is located.
Any questions? Roll call?
Briggs.
Yes.
Paredes.
Yes.
Leestra.
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Lanier.
Yeah.
Blackman.
Yes.
Horace.
Yes, and the motion is passed.
Number 16, funding special education programs, advocates for full funding of special education mandates, updates a little bit of language, and those are on one.
Roll call, please.
Paredes.
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes.
Blackman.
Yes.
Lanier.
Yeah.
Leestra.
Yes.
Horace.
Yes, the motion is passed.
17, rate similar funding of special education programs. Recommendation is to adopt.
Roll call, please.
Nelson,
Yes.
Blackman,
Yes.
Leestra.
Yes.
Lanier,
Yes.
Briggs,
Yes.
Paredes,
Yes.
Corrigan.
Yes, and the motion is passed.
18 has 2, it's a reaffirmation of existing positions. 1.08 standard test procedures and 1.09 student assessment. Recommendation is to adopt.
So this takes, this doesn't, okay, so it would go with a federal standard, not a state standard test, correct? No, it's a
It just
regional.
says a national testing company.
So would this
Like
national
Pearson.
test be in conjunction with, addition to?
National company like Pearson. Essentially, it's just limiting who can, or expanding.
Are we at the question stage?
I'm sorry?
Are we at the question stage?
Yes, you have a
Yeah.
question?
Yes.
Okay.
Is this the one they're talking about, we would kind of have all of our tests, we have one set of tests that will match up with federal tests?
Well, there is no federal
There is no
test.
federal test.
Look at what we,
Okay, sorry, I'm sorry. The level, with the state level match the federal level?
With the state
Is
what?
it that question?
No, this is trying to generate some consistency with statewide assessment in Illinois, starting with a national corporation to contract with to do the testing. That the test is given to students in October, and the districts and teachers receive that data by December. That it provides both proficiency and growth data on each child, that it is a 10-year window for this contract, so that there are no changes like we just went through with Park and the Illinois Assessment of Readiness. But
this, so that's the part that confused me. If this is a reaffirmation, we don't currently have that.
Correct. This is saying we want this.
Okay, so this is not an existing thing. It's
No.
underneath existing. but it's
Correct.
not-
And the recommendation is to adopt.
So this is this thing.
This is already existing. This is just saying this is what we want. We don't have
it's not
it,
existing.
Well,
but
it's,
this position exists.
Oh, the position
We
itself.
don't have it, but this is what we want. And we would like to see.
keep pushing for it.
Yep.
But it's actually no clarification.
Okay, my pleasure.
Roll call, please.
Blackman,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Leestra.
yes.
Paredes,
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes.
Lanier,
Yes.
Corrigan.
Yes, the motion has passed.
Okay, so if I have it correctly, the first resolution was opposed, and then resolutions 2 through 18 were supported.
Yes,
Okay.
as far as I'm aware.
Steve, do you have all this information? you need
Yes.
From us again?
First, no, rest, yes.
Okay. All
All
right, we're great. Good job.
right, let's keep moving. Can I have a motion to approve the completion of the educational adequacy assessment and long-range plan at a cost of $58,000?
So moved.
Second?
Any questions? Roll call, please.
Lanier,
Yes.
Briggs,
Yes.
Leestra.
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Blackman,
Yes.
Paredes,
Yes,
Corrigan.
Yes, and the motion has passed. Can I have a motion to approve the STEAM lab work at an estimated cost of $469,150?
So moved.
Second, but I do have a question.
Mm-hmm.
What we're approving does that little, that's the sound barrier thing that Serena's added to that, right?
Yes, that's the $6,000.
Okay, just check.
Yep.
Any other questions? Roll call, please.
Leestra.
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Lanier,
Yeah.
Blackman,
Yes.
Paredes,
yes,
Briggs,
Yes.
Corrigan.
Yes, and the motion is passed. Have a motion to approve the Canvas professional development contract at a cost of $18,000. So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Roll call, please.
Briggs,
Yes?
Lanier,
Yes.
Nelson,
Pam.
Yeah. Okay, good job.
I'm here. Whenever David talks, then I don't hear anything for a few seconds.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Blackman,
Yes.
Paredes,
Yes.
Leestra.
Yes.
Ford.
Yes, and the motion is passed. Can I have a motion, please, to approve the proposed agreement with Key Construction regarding the 2017 renovation project?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Blackman,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Lanier,
Yes.
Leestra.
Yes.
Paredes,
Yes.
Briggs,
Yes?
Ford.
Yes, and the motion is passed. Next item,
Yes.
that was, yes, we got it.
Principals, thank you so much. Have a great night.
We're not kicking you out, just so you know.
Feel free to stay all the way.
faster.
We are more than welcome to stay here until the very end, and just want to be clear, we're not done. We're not kicking you out.
We do have two discussion items. They were timely, so we wanted to bring them to the board. The first one being the tax levy, which we've talked about a lot. We've been talking about that since September. Some additional information that we have learned in the past couple of weeks that we wanted to share with the board, particularly around the property tax relief agreement. So, Brent?
So we've been talking about the levy. So the levy, the CPI is 1.9%. With the property tax relief grant money numbers coming out, it puts a new wrinkle into our thing. So,
Brent, would you mind speaking to the Sorry.
I don't think I've ever heard you speak into a microphone. I know, right? This is weird.
okay, so what I've kind of drawn up for you is, since the property tax relief numbers came out, if you look at the list, we are high enough on the list this year that should you decide to apply for the property tax relief grant money, you will receive it this year. You are higher than the $50 million mark, so you'll get that money if you choose to go for it, okay? So let's talk about what that means and what that means to the property taxpayers and what the process would be from here forward. So what we would normally be doing, what I'd normally just be talking about is just a regular old levy, and I've kind of really condensed this whole process into a couple of lines for you. So let's walk through it. Last year's levy, the uncapped extension was $24 million. The capped extension was $1.1 million. That's your bond and interest. So you had a full levy of $25.2 million. We have a CPI of 1.9. The bottom line is that the most that you can extend is 1.9% of your prior year's extension, okay? So your prior year's extension is at 24.2 million, CPI is 1.9 million. So your extension before new property with a 1.9% on would be $24.6 million, okay? And that's what we were getting ready to do, a regular 1.9 CPI levy, okay? Then you take whatever new property came into the district. You take their EAV, you would apply the rate that you got by extending here. And if we assumed $1 million, you would get an additional 64.3, okay, onto your levy. And so you were expecting to get from the 2019 levy, just putting on the CPI, $25.7 million, which would be an additional about $500,000 over last year's extension. Okay, the difference between this number and this number. So you would get an additional $500,000 into your budget, okay? That's just the regular way. So, let's take a look at what happens with the property tax relief grant. So that 25.6 was that 2019 levy, that's the 1.9 on, okay? What you will do is do your actual normal levy procedures. We'll put in the newspaper, even though we won't get over 5%, we'll still put the box in the paper to notify taxpayers. You will put on the $1.9 million, or I'm sorry, 1.9%, and you will end up with that 25.6 million. Then what you're going to do is you would approve the property tax relief grant. You would submit that to the State Board of Ed, say, yes, we want to apply. They would say, fine, you're going to get funded for that. But what you have to do is abate your property taxes. So you would abate $1.9 million. That's not my number. That is a number the state gives us. That's a requirement in order to get the money, okay? That would leave you with an extension before new property of $23.7 million. New property would get that extended, that $1 million, but it would be the rate based on that new levy. So it would be a little bit less than what we were anticipating. So your total extension would be $23.8 million, which would be $1.3 million less than what you would have levied should you not have gotten the property tax. Okay? Then the state would give you $1.6 million in that relief grant that would go to your base funding minimum from this point forward. It would mean an addition to your budget of $300,000 as opposed to the $500,000. So the district would be short for the year, a little under $250,000. However, it does give you property tax relief here, $1.3 million in total. You're going to abate 1.9, but remember, I'm talking about 1.3, meaning the difference from last year to this year. Okay. So you put on 1.9, or the 1.9%, then you abate 1.9 million. It leaves you short about $250,000 for next year's budget, which means we would need to find ways to cut $250,000 out of this budget. But so I ran, it's really difficult to tell what it will look like in next year's bills because we don't know what everyone's assessed valuation is. So what I did instead was I ran last year's bills, the 2018 bills. I said, what if I had abated $1.9 million off of last year's levy? Because I can do that, that's easy, that's just re-crunching the numbers. So I reran the numbers, I reran what the rate would have been, and I pulled 6 properties.
Can you put that up, Courtney?
I have that with the 9. And for those 6 properties, you were looking at anywhere between just shy of 8% and just a little over 11%. Depending on the assessed valuation of the home, somewhere between $150 and $360. And in this group of properties, I would say about $300 would be, the bill would have been less than what you currently have this year. But give or take 8%, 9% of what our piece of the bill is. And that's what the difference. So it's a pretty, I think you could safely say it would be about the same amount for next year. About $300. Questions? So here's what we would do. We would actually take, when we do the property tax levy, the hearing, I'll bring it back again next board meeting. We'll put it back on the agenda again in case there's any questions at all. Then on the December 9th, is it? That board meeting, you'll have a public hearing. You'll put on CPA. At the same meeting, we'll ask for you to approve applying for the property tax relief grant. Then in January, after we get notification from the state board that you would receive that funds, then you're going to approve an abatement resolution to go to Cook County Clerk's office. And then they will put on. Now, the catch on this is before, last year, The understanding was that you would abate for 1 year. The understanding now with this year's grant is that you would abate for 2 years. So this property relief would stay in place for 2 years, not just one.
So then it's 200-ish each year.
Correct.
For 2 years. So
Correct.
4,000.
Yeah.
And the real dollars to the tax homeowner, and this is if we, so this is aside from people who are putting in appeals
Correct.
already.
Correct.
So.
So
this
our-
Keeping everything even and suspending relief that people are putting in appeals
Yeah.
is 300.
Correct.
If you add on everybody with our,
With the losses that we're currently taking on appeals, yes, it could go higher. It could go a lot higher. Yeah. That's the rub.
And if we abate, that means we don't, well, if we don't go out for levy, then we leave money on the table. If we abate, then later we can catch up to where we were.
Correct.
Okay. So say we abated for 2 years, but then that would be a huge jump for the taxpayer.
Could be, yes.
But when you say we will catch up later,
You
when is
could.
the- when is the later?
Well, so the question comes is how long then will you abate for? Because, so for example, the districts that got money last year, right now, they're debating this right now. So we got the money into the base levy minimum. Do we still abate the full amount? Now, there's a lot of thoughts on that. Some people will say, well, this is a way to gain if we're not being funded fully as it is, which a lot of the districts would get this, like tier 1 and tier 2 schools, and say, hey, I'm not even at my adequacy target. This is a way for me to jump and get higher toward my adequacy target. There are some areas of thought that say, well, maybe not abate the whole amount that they required us to last year, because remember, it left me with a negative piece there. So what if I abate most of it, but reclaim that piece that we lost in the deal? There's some districts that are saying, no, the deal was, it's supposed to be a replacement of the property taxes, so we will continue to abate the same amount. I don't know where this is going to go moving forward, because as long as my understanding of this process is correct, and I'm going to, I have a lunch meeting on Friday with the South Suburban School business officials, and Tanya Antover of the Cook County Clerk's Office will be there, as she is every year. But these are some of the questions that we're asking her right now. How is your office understanding this? What is your read on this? How do we do these things, and what are its implications moving forward? So those are some of the questions I know she'll be fielding on Friday. So I'll have more information at the next committee of the whole on that one.
So we don't have to make a decision until the December vote?
Correct. Correct. So
That's
we
okay.
have some time. We have some time, but I wanted you to know, and I will be, because I'm going to be getting that preparation for the newspaper to put on full 1.9 CPI. Because remember, this will come after that. Okay. So step 1, everything is normal. Step 2, it gets crazy.
Okay, so the way it looks right now, in terms of money for the district, we would be ultimately taking on a loss if we went out, if we applied for the grant.
That's
Well, I suppose it depends on,
The levy.
well, it depends on your perspective. It's either taking 300 or taking 500. It's either taking 550 or taking 300, but neither of them are a negative loss. It's just how much are you accessing,
correct.
depending on which way you do it. Does that make sense?
So
Yeah,
do
you're
not-
accessing 500.
500 or 300.
Right.
Correct.
And then the difference would be some relief for our taxpayers and an option to bring those bills in.
But we have no idea of how much really, when that actually really translates into homeowners, right?
I mean, those are 6 homeowners you know pretty well, right? So, I mean, and those were based on actual bills, right? So those are actual numbers translated.
But going back to what Steve just brought up, in 2 years or in a year, that you could lose that or feel like you lose that if it goes up. Your taxes could go up to make.
They could, because, so here's what happens, so we're required to abate that 1.9 million for both this year and the 2020 levy next year. Okay. Now, remember, they'll feel a property tax drop this year.
Right.
Next year, if you abate it, it just maintains status quo.
Right. But next year.
The year after that, if you chose not to abate that $2 million, you could see those bills put that $300 back on again. So it would seem like a huge jump if you chose to do so.
Okay, so going back to the 6 properties that you pulled, so these homeowners saved between $148 and $363.
Correct. Now, the only way you're going to see that kind of number is if you were just looking at the District 161 line, that whole tax bill. You know, so, and you would have to compare it to the line from the property. So it'll be in that range.
And those are your.
Understanding that there are also bodies that have abated, that have to decide whether or not they're going to again. And if they don't, then in theory, this could be a net zero.
Because this is just our piece of it.
Because we're holding that.
Yeah. We can only control our line on the total bill.
And it doesn't account for people who are putting in for appeals.
Correct. And that comes back up. And that affects us upon our tax receipts.
Which make the number higher in the deficit.
Correct.
Essentially what it comes down to is, are we comfortable cutting $200,000 from the budget?
For 2 years.
Keep that in perspective, that would be 4 reading specialists.
How about this? And I need to change numbers. Are we comfortable not accessing an additional $200,000?
That's correct. That's
Not
what
cutting,
it is.
are we comfortable not accessing an additional $200,000?
So when you look at our projections, it puts you lower than what we had anticipated by 200,000. However, it's not a true $200,000 cut from the budget, to Dana's point. It's from this point forward, we have to look at salary, anything that's increasing from this point forward, we'll only have about $300,000 of new monies coming in.
If we take your grant.
Correct, so it'll be about $250,000 less than what we had anticipated having coming in for next year.
David had a question. Go ahead, Dave.
Okay, so, I just want to show clear. So we're not saying that it's $200,000 that we're not going to have short in our budget. Am I correct?
So what we would have, so again, if we were just to do our regular levy, we would have an increase in revenue of about $500,000, about $550,000. If we do the property tax relief grant, we will only have an increase to your revenues of about $300,000. So there is a shortfall there of $250,000 based on the way you've always done business. However, it is not an actual loss because you're still putting on CPI. That's what mitigates your loss, is that you're actually levying CPI and then you abate afterwards.
But you have to be.
Okay.
You have to abate.
So
You have to abate in order to get the property tax relief grant.
But is the 500 or 300 real numbers in us getting?
It doesn't account for the appeals. It does not. So what have we been seeing? We've been seeing a lot of appeals coming through. Just this last month's bills, we saw another $166,000 come in. So yeah, could your $300,000 increase be a zero? Absolutely it could, the way the appeals have been coming through. Yes, you could be approving a zero levy.
And then, what?
Cut your programs.
So this is all,
Well, you cut
Well,
something out of the budget. I'll step back off of that. I'll step back off of that. You'll have to, I mean, but truly, you have fund balances too. So you can decide what it is you want to do here. That's the good thing about the position that you're in. You can have these conversations and make these decisions, and you have time to say, how are we going to, reduce some of our costs and make sure that our budget maintains a balanced position.
However, we have agreed to dip into our fund balance.
That's correct.
So,
Spend down.
dip in, spend down, whatever you want to call it, it will be less once we do that. So that's just something to keep in mind when we're thinking about. Yeah.
So if I may, I think we should think of this in terms of the levy really just matches what is the cost generally of keeping this place running, paying people, what is the cost of education moving forward, because it's really the rate of inflation. The costs are moving in a direction, and this year it happens to be 1.9. And so, having heard the arguments over the year, we have these huge fund balances, part of that is the people in this community 10 years ago who don't have kids in this district, who put money into the community, put money into the school, they did so with a faith that you're going to add value to the school. And so I think that thinking in terms of, well, let's now take this money and filter it back into the community is kind of going against the faith that people had when they paid their taxes, including myself, that you're adding to the value of this cornerstone of our community, which is the schools itself. Taking into account that, fluctuations, that the cost of education is just going to go up. It's the nature of the economy. And that part of that is, it's not that your property value, your property taxes is going up in terms of the value that they're taking from you, but it's really, your property taxes are keeping up with, in terms of the levy that we go out for, with the cost of inflation, because that has to match what it actually costs to have a great school system, to pay people to be here, to have programs. Now, having said that, I think it's important to always look at, okay, well, what is fat and what is meat and what is bone, and decide, something something Cameron said numerous times, looking at programs and how effective they are. If they're not effective, well, then maybe they need to go, or we certainly need to talk about it. But, and this is the argument that always comes up in terms of, do we give a big tax break to all of the people that live in this community? I myself have, paid more than double, by a large degree, these 6 examples that we put up there. And as much as, yeah, it'd be great not to pay what I pay in taxes, I know that part of the deal when I moved here was that you are paying, and that every year it's going to go up. And that I feel that I'm getting the value of education that I'm putting in. Unfortunately, I think when people's children are no longer in the system, they start to think, well, wait a minute, maybe I don't need to support the schools as much as I do, but again, that's part of the community. And it's part of the reality of the economy. Prices are going to continue to go up. They've been going up since, the mid-1600s, and they're going to continue moving forward. And so the problem, again, going back to the abatement thing, is yes, I think that's people would feel good about, yes, you know, I have this cut of my taxes, you're really pulling back the rubber band. You know, if we decide, no, wait a minute, we need to catch up to the actual cost of school, we can't afford to just perpetually abate. We need to be back where we were in terms of balancing revenues that come in with expenditures going out, because I think that's how we've been successful. You know, the reason why I mentioned instead of dipping in and spending down, we're consciously spending down for a very specific program or improvement like STEM programs, STEM lab, some construction projects, something that, you know, the people who have paid taxes 10 years ago are adding money to the school to make this a better place, which might be a new foyer at Western Avenue, it might be a cafeteria at Parker someday. That we, yes, we can do because the stewards of this district were thoughtful enough to manage that so that we have those options and we can grow. That's my position on this. So I would just caution thinking that eventually, you know, everyone's going to be really happy with us forever. When I think the reality is we're going to have to catch up to what we need to catch up to in terms of the money coming in. So that, I hope that wasn't terribly confusing.
No, I hear you. You get what you put in.
Yeah, you get what you put in.
100%. If I may, in layman's terms, those numbers are amazing. Can I get the numbers? So if we abate, does that mean we don't do, like, how does that work for the, I guess I'm.
If we abate, nothing changes with your levy process.
Okay.
Nothing. It's it would just be the next step that you would then apply for that grant and then you would be required to abate if you accepted the money. Any other questions? Okay, I'll be back in 2 weeks.
What's the lowest amount that would be lucky? Is that, or live? I need to talk.
Think about it.
Yes.
And if you
I
really,
There's a lot, yes.
yeah, then you can always come and
Yeah.
chat too with those mechanics. Okay?
Is the finance committee going to have a discussion about this at their next meeting?
Probably should.
There's,
We don't have another meeting.
And encourage them.
I think that's a fantastic.
we don't engage our finance committee members.
Thank you, Carol. I'll think about it.
As recommended by Member Griggs.
Hey, what's your back? What's your back?
You just got another meeting, David.
It's okay, David. It's okay.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Yeah.
All right. I'll catch up.
Dental enrollment.
Very quickly. The dental insurance, unlike the health insurance, has a January 1 renewal date. We have three plans, basically. You have a PPO plans. Those are self-insured plans. Those premiums are high enough. The plan is doing well enough that when we went through all the numbers, and there really is no need for a premium increase, so that's going to maintain at zero. We have two HMO plans. They are fully insured with Delta Dental. The lowest premium plan also is holding its own, and Delta has no reason to give us any increase in premiums. However, the second plan, they are looking at a 5% premium increase it is actually a zero increase to the board based on the way the collective bargaining agreement is written, and it is a less than $1 per paycheck increase for the singles and less than $2 per paycheck for the family. So it really is a pretty modest increase. Bringing that to you now just as an information item because we are getting ready to do open enrollment on November 15th to December 15th. So we're going to have to kind of roll these rates out to the employees before you actually have an opportunity to approve those. Okay, any questions? And by the way, there's only about 20 people affected on those plans that are going down.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. The last items are for executive session. Need a motion, please, to adjourn to executive session to discuss matters relating to personnel, student discipline, and negotiations.
So moved.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Go. Yeah, we're moving to executive.
Just now, I got your question.